Mondaire Jones is 34 years old from New York's 17th District, serving Rockland and Westchester counties. He serves on the House Judiciary, Education, Labor, and Ethics Committee and is the first openly gay Black member of Congress. He also serves as freshman representative to the leadership, the youngest member of the Democratic House leadership team, deputy whip of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and co-chair of the LGBTQ Equality Caucus. A product of East Ramapo Public Schools, Mondaire was raised in Section 8 housing and on food stamps in the village of Spring Valley. Raised by a single mother who worked multiple jobs to provide for her family. He later graduated from Stanford University, worked at the Department of Justice during the Obama administration, and graduated from Harvard Law School. Please help us welcome Congressman Mondaire Jones.
How y'all doing this afternoon? I'm feeling good. If y'all didn't notice, we got a new Supreme Court justice. I was in the Senate chamber yesterday, and when our Vice President, Kamala Harris, announced the final vote results, it was like a fire shut up in my bones, right? I felt the ancestors, I felt the energy of the ancestors just coursing through my veins and through that chamber yesterday, and they were very pleased. And so, as Cory Booker said a few weeks ago during those dreadful confirmation hearings, don't let anybody steal the joy of this moment. Amen? I want to thank my friend, Attorney Hardy, for that very kind introduction. And for his leadership in this movement for racial justice. And of course, my heartfelt thanks to all of you in this room today. You know the importance of the fights ahead, and that's why you've joined us here today. And I want to thank you for doing your part, standing up for racial justice and for our democracy. And it is our democracy, it's this idea of multiracial democracy that I want to talk with you about today, if that's all right. As you know, our democracy is in crisis. We are living through the worst assault on the right to vote since the Jim Crow era. And in January, on the Senate floor, white nationalists used the Jim Crow filibuster to block voting rights legislation that we urgently need in this moment. The voting rights legislation that we need to build a true multiracial democracy in this country. But in the months since January, through redoubling our efforts, we have already been showing those white nationalists that while they may have blocked voting rights legislation for the time being, they did not win the contest for the soul of this nation. Amen? We, the people, are not giving up that easily. We, the people, have never given up that easily. We didn't give up when, after we finally ended the scourge of slavery in this nation, white nationalists fought back, violently unraveling Reconstruction, throwing duly elected Black people out of office and barring Black voters from the voting booth for generations. That was the first Jim Crow in this country. We, my grandparents and great-grandparents' generation, responded by organizing. And progress came in fits. It took us nearly a century, but progress did come. It came in the courtroom, where Thurgood Marshall helped to end a century of legalized segregation. It came on the streets, where the March on Washington and the Montgomery bus boycott produced meaningful social change. And it came in Congress, where after considerable pressure from the civil rights movement, we passed the Voting Rights Act of 1965 into law. And get this, we overcame a filibuster to do that, didn't we? Imagine that. Like you, I was hoping earlier this year that January's story would end the same way, with a majority of senators doing the right thing. To those of you who put it all on the line to save our democracy, to see the Freedom to Vote John R. Lewis Act become law, I want you to know that I feel your pain right now. But I do not despair. As Sherilyn Ifill, the Director General Counsel of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, said, "No story in the history of our quest for racial justice has ended with the words, 'and then they gave up.'" Our story, the story of building a true multiracial democracy in the 21st century, is no exception. The fact is, progress isn't always linear. It's messy. There are false starts. There are setbacks, like what happened in January. But the weight of history and the force of reason are on our side. I grew up in the Baptist church. So to quote again from the book of Jeremiah, like a fire shut up in my bones, I know that goodness will prevail in this country. I know it. I know it sincerely. Nothing can convince me otherwise. As the elders used to say, trouble don't last always. Amen? Weeping may endureth for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. And look at how far we've come already. Just a few years ago, democracy reform was a pipe dream. It was embraced only by the most committed activists in this country. But thanks to an overwhelming groundswell of energy, of movement building, of organizing, the Freedom to Vote John R. Lewis Act passed the House, and it came just 2 votes shy of passing in the United States Senate. So I don't know about you, but I know I'm not going anywhere. I am more energized than ever to see this thing through. First thing we got to do is we got to pick up some Senate seats this fall to make. There's 2 more Senate seats this fall to make future filibustering of voting rights legislation an impossibility. This is the fight of our lives for our civil rights, our health care, our jobs, our economy, our climate, our dignity, our freedom. You know what's going on in this country. Our future. We have no choice but to keep going. What is at stake is not just our democracy, but our capacity to solve the real crises that are facing the American people, including Black America. So now we've got to press ahead. We know that the far right is already hard at work to subvert the next elections. We see that in Georgia and in Texas and in Florida. So we've got no time to waste. I'm here to tell you that. Together, we can build the true multiracial democracy that we deserve. A democracy where your vote and every vote matters, because we've ended the scourge of partisan gerrymandering, where you never have to worry about whether your friends or your family or your loved ones are registered to vote, because we've registered people automatically in this country, where you don't need to justify voting by mail, where teachers and janitors and bartenders who aspire to run for office can mount competitive campaigns, even if they don't come from money or from a political family, where candidates for office make their case to we the people rather than a powerful select few, where elections are won by uplifting voters, catch that, rather than suppressing their right to vote. That is a democracy where the American people are in charge, not white nationalists or a select powerful few. So I am so proud to stand side by side with you in this fight. I am reminded of the words of Dr. King in his 1966 speech in Kingtree, South Carolina. Let us march on ballot boxes, for this is the way we're going to straighten up the nation. Let us march on ballot boxes until somehow we will be able to develop that day when men will have food and material necessities for their bodies, freedom and dignity for their spirits, and education and culture for their minds. Let us march on ballot boxes so that men and women will no longer walk the streets in search of jobs that do not exist. Let us march on ballot boxes until empty stomachs are filled. Let us march on ballot boxes until the idle industries of Appalachia are revitalized. Let us march on ballot boxes until brotherhood is more than a meaningless word at the end of a prayer, but rather the first order of business on every legislature's slate or agenda. Let us march on ballot boxes. Dr. King's words are as true today as they were nearly 60 years ago. But while our work must include the ballot box, it must also go beyond it. We must envision the world as we want it. And we must do everything in our power to bring about that world. So hold your elected officials accountable. Educate your friends, your family, your neighbors. Change their hearts and their minds. Recently, I was in Selma, Alabama to commemorate the 57th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, which many of you know led to the enactment of the original Voting Rights Act. As John Lewis marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, they beat him so badly with those billy clubs that he became unconscious. They broke his skull. Thankfully, unlike John Lewis and his generation, we are not called on to risk our lives. We are merely called on to use the rights that they secured for us, our votes and our voices. Like those before us, let us march on, and together we will win this fight. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was the photographer. Zanzibar. The way I have it. Yep, that's the way I have it. Thanks.
Yeah, a lot. Do you have notes on your phone too? Me too.
Yeah, I got it ready. I can't even remember what I do, so I gotta write it down.
Yep. Good afternoon, everyone. Can we give this National Action Network convention a big hand as to all the things that we've done thus far? And keep clapping while we clap for our leader and founder, Reverend Al Sharpton, our chairman of the board, Franklin Richardson, vice chair, Jennifer Alston Jones. And for all of you that are here today, give yourselves a hand. For those of you that do not know, I am the Northeast Regional Director. My name is Pastor Steffi Bartley, and I cover New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. And this part of our panel is so important because we understand how vitally important this is for us to understand the broadband internet access. We know that there is a broadband action emergency that is here in America after the COVID-19 and still going on pandemic. It has been exposed, and this digital divide is so vitally important in an unprecedented way. And so our nation and our leaders are addressing this immediate concern, and the National Action Network, as always, is leading the forefront, that we begin to explain to you all how important it is that we understand the broadband and the internet. It was a time when we would have those phones in our homes that we would dial. Nowadays, if you do not have a cell phone or access to internet, you are way behind. And under the leadership of Reverend Al Sharpton, we're trying to make sure that everyone is equipped, from our youngest to our seniors, so that you have this type of experience, so that you are no longer left behind. And so, yes, give yourselves a hand and name. right before we introduce our panelists, there is a video that is going to be coming forth from I want to make sure I say her name right. That is Mylinda Albright. She is the assistant to the vice president of AT&T, and as many know, one of our board members, Tanya Lombard, and AT&T has really been leading the front in making sure that other organizations and companies are a part of what we're doing today. And so as you can look to the screens, you will see her giving this opening address to all of us that are here. Thank you.
Thank you for that warm introduction. My name is Mylena Albright, and I'm proud to serve as the Assistant Vice President of Corporate Social Responsibility at AT&T. It is truly an honor to kick off such an important event featuring an esteemed panel discussing an incredibly important topic at this year's convention. I'm responsible for leading the Community and Social Investment team, which supports strategies and programs for our education initiatives, online safety, and other programs for diversity and inclusion. We gather here today at a pivotal moment in our nation's pursuit of equity. Still today, in our connected world, millions of Americans are not connected to the internet despite its availability. The pandemic showed that for many communities of color, gaps in broadband adoption and utilization stand in the way of achieving digital equity and inclusion. These connectivity gaps keep students from school, patients from healthcare, and employees from jobs. But here's the good news. We have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to bridge the digital divide once and for all. With passage of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the Biden administration and Congress invested an unprecedented $65 billion into digital divide initiatives, including programs aimed at digital equity and adoption. This adds necessary support to private industry's $1.8 trillion network investment over the past 2 decades. As states, localities, and the federal government set out on the hard mission of closing the digital divide, I'm here today to deliver a simple message. AT&T is not sitting this one out. We are hard at work promoting digital equity and positioning communities to reach their full potential. I know many of you haven't had a chance yet to hear about some of the exciting projects AT&T is collaborating on this year, so I'd like to highlight a few ways in which we're working to boost digital equity. We announced an investment of $2 billion from 2021 to 2024 to address the digital divide through low-cost broadband offers and community investment. As part of that commitment, we launched AT&T Connected Learning to invest in digital literacy tools, education resources, and broadband technology and computers to help today's learners succeed inside and outside the classroom. Through our AT&T Connected Learning Centers, we're working hand in hand with local organizations and nonprofits to provide essential high-speed internet, computers, and educational resources for students in underserved communities. We have plans to open more than 20 centers across the country that will be housed within local organizations supporting under-resourced populations. And we are offering free access to digital literacy and learning resources to help encourage students and their parents to engage safely and effectively with the internet. These resources include free digital literacy courses and workshops we created with the Public Library Association, and our newly launched free digital learning platform, the Achievery, that helps to make distance learning more engaging, entertaining, and inspiring for K-12 students. AT&T Connected Learning builds on our long-term commitment to education. Since 2008, we've committed more than $600 million to programs that help millions of students across all 50 states and around the world. I'm beyond proud of AT&T's digital equity efforts, including right here in New York. AT&T collaborated with Connected Nation late last year to place connectivity solutions vital to education into the hands of those who need it most. The initiative contributed more than 3,500 free hotspots and free internet connectivity to 12 New York educational nonprofits and school districts. The program also benefited 35,000 students across the country. Early this year, we announced that we are working with nonprofits Human IT and Mission Ignite to provide 4,000 free or low-cost refurbished computers to New York students and families affected by the digital divide. This is part of a bigger project nationwide to provide more than 20,000 refurbished computers to those who need them most. To connect the unconnected, we must meet people where they are and show them how safely using the internet can improve their lives. As a leading telecommunications provider, AT&T is actively engaging communities across the Empire State. 2022 may be off to a fast start, but make no mistake, we have a lot of work ahead of us. That's why I and many others at AT&T have been energetically involved with the National Action Network and other stakeholders in these efforts, and I'm especially proud to provide our support. I look forward to working together to accomplish the amazing things that lie ahead of us, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to join today's conference. Thank you.
Let's give Madeline a hand. All right, amen. Now let's get into it. It's so vitally important. As you can see, our panelists are here. We're working on a nameplate here for Najee Roach, who is going to be filling in for another one of our board members, that is Camille Joseph, representing Spectrum. And so we're going to ask, starting with you, Najee, just tell us a little bit about who you are, your role in your company or your organizations in less than 3 minutes.
All right, 3 minutes or less. Can everyone hear me?
I give you 5.
Oh, that's way too long. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me here. It's absolutely a pleasure to represent Charter Communications, better known to our customers and communities as Spectrum. We operate in 41 states. Sure, sorry. Is that better? All right, excellent. We serve millions of customers across the United States. We're in about 41 states, and we provide cable communications, telephone services, and of course, the star of the hour, broadband. And you know, the last few years has been ground-changing, or groundbreaking, I should say, for every facet of our society, and that couldn't be more true than for broadband access and the role that that has played in keeping communities and entire regions connected to their loved ones, to education, to their workplaces. So really looking forward to today's discussion with my peers here and with all of you. Thank you.
Anthony?
Hello, everybody. My name is Anthony Avent. I serve as the technical manager for Nork Fiber. I provide technical operations services and strategic planning for Nork Fiber. Nork Fiber is a municipal broadband program for the city of Newark. We started this as a pilot, and we now provide high-speed 10 gigabit internet at low cost to residents and businesses in the city.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michelle Kober. I'm Executive Director of External Affairs at Verizon. It is my absolute pleasure to be here today. Verizon is a longstanding and proud supporter of the National Action Network, and we are very happy to be here and engage in this very important conversation. We absolutely have taken even more steps to bridge the digital divide, which existed before the pandemic. But as we all know, and as we have heard many, many times, that the pandemic exposed issues that were already too prevalent in our communities. And so at Verizon, we have doubled down on efforts that we had in place before to make sure that we are addressing communities in need. And I'm looking forward to talking to you about some of the programs that we engage in during this conversation over the next hour.
Hello. Hello. Hi, I'm Garth Nahr. I am the CEO of Avatar Tech. We are a Black-owned broadband infrastructure, fiber optic design and build company based in Newark, New Jersey. One of our clients is actually Newark Fiber, and we work with a number of towns and municipalities in northern New Jersey, as well as Rockland County and New York and the greater New York City metro. We experienced firsthand the issue with the digital divide. We have 30 years of experience in this field, and what we do is we provide solutions, and we do it locally, and we do our best to make sure that we include a diverse and talented workforce to get this accomplished. And we look forward to sharing on this panel.
Your Honor, Scott.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Scott Woods. I am the Director of the Office of Minority Broadband Initiatives at NTIA, the National Telecommunications and Information Administration in Washington, D.C. As the other panelists have mentioned at the top of this panel, as part of the $65 billion broadband infrastructure law programs, $50 billion of that will come through my agency. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second here. But as part of, and the director of the Office of Minority Broadband Initiatives, we work specifically with historically black colleges and universities, tribal colleges and universities, and minority-serving institutions, as well as the communities in which they sit and serve to address broadband access, digital inclusion, and equity. And then part of our role in the IIJA broadband grant programs, the $50 billion grant programs, is to make sure that all of our communities are engaged, you know what's coming, you know what the state is responsible for, so we can be activated and, more importantly, included in the funds, in the programming, in the direction that these programs and funds will ultimately come down and address unserved and underserved communities in our jurisdiction. So it's my pleasure to be here with you today, and I look forward to a robust conversation. Thank you.
And Your Honor, we're glad you're here too with $50 million. Derek?
Yes, sir. Hello, everyone. My NAN family. My journey has begun over here with National Action Network, starting over at the Hall of Justice. My company, Netarius Technology Solutions, we are a full-service IT and technology company. By integrating technology across municipal government, businesses, communities within New Jersey. Right now, at this moment, we are involved with the initiatives to build out broadband technology within townships and cities with some of the great partners that you see here on this panel. Our goal is to help close the digital divide. Right now, at this moment, there's no better opportunity. I've been doing this now for over 30 years. So the window of opportunity to actually close this divide, to help the people within our community by building great collaborations like you see here on this panel, it is set, and is set for all of us. So we look forward to talking to you more during this panel, and let's go.
Sean, I'm going to ask that you go last because we're going to propose our first question to you. Okay. So Victor, can you introduce yourself?
Good afternoon. I'm so pleased to be here. My name is Victor Lawrence. I was Executive Vice President at AT&T Bell Laboratories. And so most of these things that you see in these broadband products and services are things that I created, and people in my organization who worked for me created these things. From Bell Laboratories, I became a dean at Stevens Institute of Technology, teaching. And I'm doing a lot of research now as the senior research scientist, doing a lot of research still in this area of broadband. And the thing that I'm so proud of and I'm seeing happening is that when we started these broadbands in the 1980s, late 70s and 80s, we didn't think that it could be so prevalent as it is today. So I did some of the very first experiments in the lab to demonstrate this capability. Now I'm devoted to seeing how this broadband can be incorporated into the lives of people of our kind in inner cities and in rural areas. So I'm very pleased that I'm here to hear this progress that are going on, especially you have a number of companies. You talked about AT&T and Verizon and so forth. Well, I was part of that, the Bell system when it started.
Sean?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sean Mickens. I'm the Associate Vice President for External Affairs at Comcast. I am more than delighted to be joining you here today to talk about this topic of broadband connectivity and digital inclusion. I started my career as a fellow working at the National Urban League on broadband and technology issues, looking at them at the intersection of people who look like me and the people who live in our urban communities. It is my great honor and pleasure to represent Comcast here, who has been a leader in providing low-cost, affordable broadband for years and is very much so committed to digital equity in all of the communities that we serve, which means providing access to the internet, giving people the tools they need to safely engage online, and helping people take advantage of all the full economic opportunities that are available to you as being a part of the internet. So I'm more than delighted to be up here representing Comcast and up with my peers to talk about all of the great work that we're planning to do to help close the digital divide.
So Sean, as you just concluded introduction of the panelists, our first question goes to you, and I ask that you would respond in somewhat of a 3-minute way. How has the broadband coverage improved in connection to the area since the start of COVID's pandemic? And what are some of the programs Comcast implements to help our community?
Got you. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Internet Essentials program, but for the past decade, Comcast has had a program that provides reliable internet access to low-income families called Internet Essentials. Once the pandemic began, we retrofitted the program a little bit more to increase the speeds that people would have available to them. The cost of the program is $9.95. $9.95. And throughout the pandemic, we recognized that people were relying more on our network. So we increased the speeds available to our Internet Essential qualifying customers. We also built out stronger partnerships with community leaders and community organizations in which we worked with community partners to actually install hotspots so that students and families could come and safely access the internet as they were working from home doing distance learning, and then to also provide them a plethora of resources in digital learning skills.
Michelle, I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think the only other program outside of just our Internet Essentials program, we also had a commitment through our RISE program, which was to help entrepreneurs and small businesses. Essentially with RISE, we were providing marketing and technology services to many minority-owned businesses. This was a part of a $100 million commitment that we made. And we're very pleased to be continuing that program, and we will be announcing some more of our grants a little bit later this year.
Same question, Michelle.
So when the pandemic started, we really started to think about what are the aspects of the problem. And so the aspects of why people aren't connected seem to break down into 3 areas. One being access, where they don't actually have access to the internet or a physical connection in their home. Another aspect of it is adoption. So they have the physical connection in their home, but they have not called a company and hooked up to the actual service. And the third aspect is affordability. They have it there, they know they need it, but they can't afford it. So one thing that Verizon is very, very happy to announce, we recently announced a program for those who are participating in the Affordable Connectivity Program, which is a program from the FCC. If you are participating in that program, you can get absolutely free internet through our Verizon Fios Forward program. You have no deposit, no setup charge, no service charges. So if you are, or members of your community, people you know, are participating in the Affordable Connectivity Program, understand that you can get free Fios Forward, which provides a home broadband internet to you with fast fiber network. So that's just one thing. I know we have a lot of panelists. I don't want to take up too much time, but that's one thing that I really want to highlight because it really will be a game changer in many of our communities for absolutely free internet service.
Najee?
So I'm really glad that Michelle went there because those three items are really the cornerstone of what we talk about when we as a company look to ways to close the divide. As some of you may have seen in your communities, Spectrum has made multi-year investments to reach folks where they're at. So if that means that you are, mobility limited or you don't travel far, we've gone into about 40 locations across our service area here in New York City and opened learning labs, which are basically digital technology labs. Sometimes they're based in schools, they can be based in houses of worship, they can also be based as standalone or adjacent to other sort of community service hubs. We consider these to be centers that provide language access support services, maybe food and nutrition education services. But digital literacy is one of the sort of barriers that we know has persisted long before the pandemic. How many of us has to teach our elders how to go to a doctor's appointment online? We had to teach our elders and our community members how to hold a church service online, let alone teaching the little ones how to focus and sit at the dinner table and maybe take an exam or work with their classmates. So as much as we talk about digital access and the infrastructure that provides that, a company of our size, we've also been able to sort of pivot and think, okay, we have funding, we have communities that we know are in need of service, but what kind of service do they need? Do they need services in their neighborhood? Do they need digital assistive devices like tablets or laptops? Do we need to go to schools and talk to teachers and educators and say, help us identify where the gaps are in the community? You are sort of the ground zero. If a student isn't able to do their homework at night, or if parents are coming in and saying, we can't keep up with the syllabus, or we can't keep up with the assignments because we ourselves are struggling with digital literacy, those are some of the areas that Charter Spectrum has really targeted to sort of look at the access issue, look at the affordability issue, but also look at some of these more hard to identify adoption issues and again, meet folks where they're at and sort of take the rising tide lifts all ships boats. And we're proud to say that it's been successful, pre-pandemic, and we look forward to continuing that success thereafter.
Wow. Any other panelists like to comment on this before we move to our next question? Okay, let's give them another hand. So Garth, as we listen to that, our next question is proposed to you, and that is, what are the educational and economic impact associated with no broadband or broadband access?
Okay, well, this is an issue near and dear to our heart here at Avatar Tech. Being a Black-owned business, we see, and a small business, we see a lot of the solutions that are being set forth to solve a lot of the problems. But we know that this problem is mainly in the inner cities as well as the rural areas. And from our perspective, we want to get these problems solved, but we also want to be a part of the solution. And when I say we, I'm talking about our communities, our businesses, and our workforce. Because not having that kind of connection is not only a #1 priority for education, remote access to just the school and learning and connection with the teachers during times of pandemic, but also access to digital libraries, digital research online for homeworks, homework and reports and things like that, it's absolutely crucial in this day and age that our young people have that connection. The issue is then further compounded when you look at all of the opportunities that are mushrooming right now in Web 2.0 and Web 3.0. When we look at cryptocurrencies, the blockchain, and the metaverse, it's time to start looking at the internet as more of a utility rather than a nice-to-have service. It's an actual need, and I think that cities and businesses within our community can help to solve these problems.
Wow, that's so. Wow, it's so heartbreaking in a sense where you have to now look at the internet as a utility. So that means like your water bill, gas bill, electric bill. This is a need. You can't. When I grew up, we knew who didn't have any service because the extension cords would be running from one apartment building to the other. And so we understand how essential that is. I say this all the time. Many people don't realize that many of us grew up with 2 TVs. One was for the sound and the other one was for the picture. and Mother Carr, we didn't have Spectrum and Verizon with remote controls. We had a pair of grip pliers. And if you wanted HD, you would have to take a clothes hanger and wrap some aluminum foil around that. Tell the kids they would take turns as to who's going to stand with the clothes hanger. Your Honor, I now want to propose this question to you, as I think it's so vitally important as we hear that President Biden, we saw him just the other day at the White House. We thought he was coming back. President Biden signed this infrastructure investment to this JOB Act and to law, and includes this significant of $65 billion to help this digital divide in the NTIA, this task to manage $42.45 billion for broadband, equality, access, and development. These programs, with the approval regulations to assure the funding, are being used in areas that need it the most, and that we know in the brown and the black community. Tell us more about that.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. I'm going to have a couple of slides here, just because the information is a lot of information. So if you can go to the next slide and the slide after that, so the third slide up. You don't have to see my picture here. So this is just an overview of what we're talking about. It's part of the historic Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. So it creates $65 billion in broadband funding, and as we just talked about, $48 billion of which will come to NTIA. But I want to talk about 3 programs generally. That's the BEAD program, the digital equity, and the middle mile, because that's going to impact broadband access and infrastructure in unserved and underserved and vulnerable communities primarily. And then you heard others talk about the FCC's Affordable Connectivity Program. There's $14 billion on that to defray the cost of broadband, internet, and devices. But I'm going to focus in on the BEAD program first, $42.4 billion, right? The BEAD and the digital equity programs, and we all need to understand this money is going to the states, right? And the states have the obligation under the BEAD program to focus on unserved and underserved communities, right? So not just policy prescriptions, hard data. So underserved communities, those communities that do not have access to 25.3, 25 megabits download, 3 megabits upload. Those communities that do not have access to 100 megabits download and 20 megabits upload, right? So that's underserved. As well as those community anchor institutions, right? Schools, hospitals, libraries, institutions of higher education, public housing. The expansive definition of community anchor that's used in the Act is more than just our schools and our hospitals and libraries. But those community anchor institutions that do not have gigabit connections, These are all program priorities under the BEAD that the state plan must consider, must have a plan to address this, and those plans must be targeted to those individuals in those communities. A little bit about the digital equity program, $3 billion, almost $2.75 billion. And we talk about B's and M's, and this is a lot of information. This is a lot of money. This is a historic investment to ensure that the issues that we're talking about as a result of the pandemic, our school children, our businesses, our entrepreneurs not having access to the internet the way some communities have, right? Some institutions being able to flip a switch, and yeah, there's some getting used to it, but they can still sell their goods and services. They can still educate their children and their youth. The digital equity program is going to be designed to ensure that we not only do you have the devices and the implementation, but we're talking about job training, workforce development, economic development training, and the like. $2.75 billion in that program. And then the Middle Mile program is $1 billion in that, and that is to ensure that we have, from a wholesale standpoint, that we have sufficient backhaul and transmission into unserved and underserved communities. Again, that's technical. But I want to go to the next slide, please, really quickly. And the reason why I want to focus in on the BEAD program, again, I told you the money is going to the states. It has program priorities. We're emphasizing speed requirements, right? So a particular project can't come in and just do 25.3. They have to do the minimum amount, which is a dedicated speed of over 100 over 20. But most importantly, what I want you all to know is we need to engage with the state broadband offices right now. Right? If you're representing a community, if you're representing a community that is unserved or underserved, right, we need to activate with the state broadband offices, with the governor's offices right now before this money comes down, right? The notice of funding opportunity for the BEAD program comes out next month. That will contain all of the rules and the requirements and the criteria that the states must follow. All right, so we need to be activated in our communities and engaging right now so that when the plans do come up for consideration at NTIA, they absolutely reflect the input from you and your communities that you represent. If we miss this opportunity, right, every state is different. We understand that there are some states that historically do not fund certain communities, and we all know what the hell I mean by certain, right? I don't have to say it, but we know what we're talking about. But we want to ensure, again, that the state is responsible to ensure unserved and underserved locations are the target and focus of this money, right? Not just the areas that have internet to get increased internet, right? We want to level the playing field, if you will, to ensure that all communities have that baseline infrastructure and the digital equity access and inclusion and training that they need. And then finally, if we can just go to the next slide, and one more after that. So local coordination is key. This is going to be the bedrock fundamental principle under the BEAD program. We are requiring states to conduct local coordination and outreach. The plans must reflect what they've done to reach out into vulnerable communities, unserved and underserved communities, to garner data, to understand the issues, to understand the digital needs and the infrastructure needs. The plans that move forward must reflect the state's plan and what they've done. It must document what they've done to do that. I'm encouraging each and every one of you, don't wait till the state comes to you. Let's go to them. We go to them and outline what we need for our communities, because as community leaders, we all know, you know better than I do in Washington, D.C., what your community needs. And so if we activate with the decision makers and be a part of that decision-making process at the pre-planning and the planning stage, that is how we ensure that when this money comes out and comes down, that it absolutely goes to the communities that most need it. And we're not worried about, historically, our communities being overlooked. I also want to talk about the challenge process, just technically, just a little bit. The BEAD program is going to be based in part on new maps that the FCC is charged to produce. Those maps will come out later this year, but to cover ourselves, if you will, we've put in a challenge process. We don't have to rely on the data that the FCC will provide, which is more granular data and more granular maps to show where broadband is and where broadband is not. But if your local government, if your state has better data, you can use that data as a basis to support the plan that moves forward. So that challenge process is going to be very important. And then with any program, there is a matching requirement. It's 25%, but we do have the ability to waive it. That's very important. But that is something that the community, the state has to put that in their plan, that they're requesting that NTIA waive that matching provision and not use that as a basis to disqualify, right, Black and brown and women-owned and minority-owned businesses from participating because of this matching requirement. Okay? So one more slide, and then I promise I'll be done if we can go to. I've got 10 minutes, but I'll
your time, Jan.
all right. Really go to the digital equity program just as a high level. Again, this money, again, is going through the states. So we have to be activated with our state broadband offices. Here in New York, they have a state broadband office. I just left an event at Medgar Evers College. None of the community leaders there knew that New York State had a broadband office. Not only did they not know New York State did not have a broadband office, they also didn't know that New York State has been garnering a $100 million grant program for the last 10 years. And so if we don't know about that, then how can that money ever come into our communities if we don't even know we have a broadband office and they've been operating a state broadband fund for the last, 10 years, right? So, all right, so I digress, but again, that is what we're focusing on. Under the digital equity plan, $2.75 billion, it focuses specifically on veterans, individuals earning below the poverty line, elderly, incarcerated, people with disabilities, people with the language barrier, right? Individuals in specific racial and minority ethnic groups, as well as individuals who live in rural areas. Okay, so again, we need to activate because these are program priorities. These are must-haves, not y'all should do, or we think y'all might want to do this. This is you must do this. The plans must reflect the needs of the program priorities that are outlined in the legislation. And then finally, it's 3 programs. The state has to do a planning grant program, right? We will give the state money to figure out what's needed. $60 million. So if your state, we don't know what our state, what we need, we will fund the state to figure it out. Not only will we fund the state to figure it out from a planning standpoint, we have $1.44 billion for the state not only to plan it, but then to effectuate that plan. That's the capacity building. So we can hire the appropriate people, do the appropriate mapping studies that you'll need, collect the appropriate data, right? Be a part of the process. And then finally, if the state does the planning grant, if they do the capacity grant program, then they get an opportunity to implement it through a competitive grant program. So $2.75 billion on top of the $42.4 billion on infrastructure. And the infrastructure program in the BEAD also includes digital equity and inclusion and adoption programs as well. So just wanted to highlight those 3. I know I have 10 minutes. It's a lot of information, but I'm available. My team is available from the Office of Minority Broadband Initiatives. A lot of this information we have on our website. We have conducted public listening sessions where the in-depth proposal overview of all of these programs is on our website. The audio archives of our listening sessions are available. So I am giving you, and I want all of you to leave here, I'm giving you the same information that we're providing to the state broadband offices. Right, we need to operate from the same framework of understanding about what is required of them, and then we need to hold their butts accountable. And how do we do that? We activate. we should be involved in these pre-planning and planning meetings right now to ensure that our communities are represented, because in the first time in a very long time, the money is here. And as you heard about it, it's not just federal government money, it's money from private equity, it's money from the carriers and the service providers. We all understand how much the lack of broadband has impacted our communities, and more importantly, America as a whole competitively as we move forward and away from this pandemic. So again, thank you for allowing me to just have a little bit of time to go through this. I know it's a lot of information, but we have much more information on our website and that is available to you. So thank you.
Amen. Let's give him a hand. And then I just would like to say that if you go on the National Action website, all you have to do is just click on to NAN Tech World. And you will also see that information. We want to make sure that that information is provided. That's why we are here. That's why we need everyone to take advantage of this. That way they won't be able to take the money that is for us away from us because of our lack of concern. It is so vitally important. That's why Reverend Sharpton wanted to make sure that we had this broadband panel, so that every home have access to an internet. Every home have computers and laptop. From the smallest to the oldest, we want to make sure, and that's part of what we came to the conclusion how important it was for us to set up the NAN Newark Tech World in the city of Newark, where we have 30,000 square feet. We're doing all of the things that he just mentioned. We're doing the broadband in its digital divide. We're doing the graphing. We're doing the 3D coding. We're doing the cybersecurity. And then what we're making sure that is happening, that everyone that comes to our location, we're setting up a location right now in Brooklyn, New York. If you have time, you can see our tech bus that is out there. Many of you remember the bookmobile. Well, now we have the technology mobile, where we have it on the move. And we're coming to these locations to make sure everyone have access to internet. And it's been such a blessing to partner with AT&T, with Charter Spectrum, with Verizon, and with Comcast, so that all of these services are made available. And so that's why it's so important that you just don't come here today, but that you make sure that you are a member of the National Action Network and that you have access to all of these things that are going to be made available. And so Derek Law, can you talk a little bit more about that? And Anthony, just talk about how that increases, how that just opens so many doors for others to be a part of this.
Thank you, Pastor. It's exciting to be a part of Tech World, NAN Newark Tech World. I can remember when it was first birthed. My company is a minority-owned MBE, a DBE, so we have all the certifications that most companies need to be able to do business. And one of those projects was NAN Newark Tech World. And so with the leadership of Pastor and Reverend Al Sharpton, they collaborated with the city of Newark and Panasonic. They came together. They took, I believe, Pastor, it was a YMCA building?
Old Boys and Girls Club.
Old Boys and Girls Club that wasn't being used. It was designed out. They hired my company, Notarius, to do all of the wiring in the building. I believe that Panasonic donated probably over $500,000 worth of equipment. We deployed technology. There was like 6 or 7 classrooms that deliver Cisco 3D printing. The gym is huge, all kinds of events, drone training, digital literacy training, podcasting. So our company, that right there was an opportunity to help our company do business, as well as help those who are employed by our company. The company is partnered with Tech World so that when Tech World train up people, they have an opportunity to work with a company like mine, a company like Garth, a company that are MBEs, minority-owned companies in the community, because we're in the community and they live in the community. So when my company earn revenue, I live in the community, I spend in the community, they spend in the community, and the dollars stay in the community. And that's the way that we build wealth, and that's why we need to have the tech world based on the vision that Pastor Bartley has across the country, where every chapter is, and we're hoping to be able to do that with this panel.
Anthony?
The City of Newark, in collaboration with NAN Tech World, has utilized our municipal broadband program, Newark Fiber, to provide and deliver high-speed internet and Wi-Fi services at the NAN Tech Center. Our latest efforts have been to utilize the NAN Tech Center as a hub to reach into the community to our rec centers, where we now provide gigabit speed internet for all in the community. And we are also working on workforce development programs at the NAN Tech Center and other training courses that Derek has mentioned.
And not only that, Spectrum, Charter Spectrum is also playing a key role at the House of Justice. They also do the same thing. In fact, when you have a chance and you visit our tech bus, you'll see that Spectrum has provided us with access to the internet, where in fact the wires have been taken from underground over to where the bus is, just to make sure that everyone have access to internet. And if it's something that you need to do, if you're still at work right now, you can just get right on the tech bus and just go right online and check your emails and do whatever you need to do. And that's why this is so vitally important. Reverend Sharpton is saying to me, not only do I want a tech bus in New York and in New Jersey, but Detroit, LA, Chicago, Atlanta, all over the country. And we have to make sure that we take advantage of what the Honorable Scott Woods is telling us about, and to make sure that we are part of what Najee and what Michelle and what Sean is talking about with these organizations. I mean, you have the best ones here. You have Charter, you have Verizon, you have Comcast, AT&T. We have it all, and to be able to take advantage of this is really not only going to benefit us, but our next generation, the generation after that, the generation after that, and on and on and on, so that we are no longer left behind. Absolutely. Many of us are familiar with our children going to school, and 25 children are sharing 3 laptops. We want to make sure that when a child goes to school, where I live, where they're giving out MacBooks, in the area that I live, we really don't need them. We can pay for them ourselves. And that's what Your Honor Scott is talking about, that we really need to take advantage of these opportunities. Yes. Amen, Wall.
Yes. Amen. All right, Pastor.
And so here, Gath, we want to, as we talked about the state and the local cities and the municipalities using this broadband as take an opportunity for this digital equality. Tell us more about that.
Digital equality, yes. To me, digital equality and inclusion is about providing services and opportunities for the community to engage with technology. Not just providing affordable or free internet, but also providing the opportunity for people to show their skills in the community. So whether that's hackathons or some sort of competitions, creating an energy and excitement around technology is something that I also think is important for digital equity. So having events and different touch points for the city to really engage and residents to engage with technology is what I think.
Gath?
Yes.
With regard to digital equity?
Yes.
Yes. Well, one thing I want to do too, I want to give it up to the city of Newark too for being one of 3 cities in the United States. Newark is one of like 3 cities in the United States that have had their own municipal broadband internet. I think, going back at least 5 years or more. So it creates a unique opportunity and breeding ground to get ahead of some of these problems. And one of the things they did to balance out the digital divide and bridge the digital divide was to extend internet to recreation centers throughout the city, and reach pretty much every corner of the city, so that if children didn't have internet at home, they could go to the nearest recreation center. As a company, we think that there's an opportunity there for other cities to follow that model and do things like that. Make sure that there's internet going to the local recreation centers, the local libraries, maybe even the local schools, and create plans to aggressively tackle this broadband issue and end it once and for all.
Michelle?
So we think about digital inclusion as addressing the barriers to connectivity. And so we talked about some of those earlier. And so Verizon has the goals around education and around small businesses, because we've talked about it today, where small businesses have really suffered because they weren't immediately ready to pivot to online when the pandemic hit. So with respect to education, we have for many years had the Verizon Innovative Learning Program, which provides technology and devices and educational tools to Title I schools. And we're now in over 500 schools across the country. And not only are we focusing on students, but we have also put together a curriculum for teachers, because as the technology evolves, the teachers also need to evolve and learn more about the technology that's out there. And so we have a goal of reaching 10 million youth by 2030 to get them the digital skills training that they need, not only now, but for next generation jobs. And also, we created a platform, a completely free platform for small businesses called Verizon Small Business Digital Ready. If you have a small business, you can log on, and there are a variety of tools, workshops, and modules that you can choose for your small business needs. And not only that, we will connect you with a coach. There are grant opportunities that you have if you sign up for Small Business Digital Ready, and also you have a network. So you would be connected if you have a food business. You could be connected with other food businesses, because we all know how important it is to not only learn from the resources, but we learn from each other. So those are just a couple of things that we are doing, but we are really committed to really putting a stake in the ground and setting real long-term goals to ensure digital equity and inclusion.
Wow. Najee?
That's really great. Right before the pandemic started, one of the most long-standing and significant investment buckets that Charter Spectrum amplified, right, and the pandemic kind of raised the stage on it, we had digital broadband literacy grants that we deployed throughout the state of New York. And here locally in New York City, our public library systems, our after-school programs, a lot of our households, if you have nieces, nephews, grandkids, or your own kids, the Summer Youth Employment Program, some of these sort of anchor programs and services that have been mainstays in the community since I'm a product of New York City Public Schools, and Summer Youth was around when I was in school. And they always had, there were never enough slots. There were never enough activities for all of us. So we know how important it is to provide funding to some of these hub sites so that they can open a child's imagination about what a future through the internet and the opportunities that the internet offers, right? We all know that if a child never sees a woman doctor or a black teacher or a black engineer, their imagination doesn't really open up to that being a possibility for them. And so Spectrum Scholars is another program that we're really, really proud of. Our partnership with the Urban League, our longstanding partnership with NAN, all of these sort of form an ecosystem where we want to reach the next generation as young as possible. If you hand a 2-year-old a tablet, they'll probably figure out how to open your banking app and download Roblox before you can. But the point being, maybe you don't have the ability in your home to have the most high-tech equipment. Well, you know what? If our company supports and enables the local public library system or that local church to make these investments, it means that that child and that those students can have these tools within reach, and that means there's a whole world of opportunity that opens up to them. So we talk about connectivity, we talk about the importance of corporate social responsibility. It's important that you see your partners in the digital space at work in your community. One of the things that hasn't been touched on yet, but it's something we're extremely proud of, and I'm proud of because I started my career in government, first at the state, then with the city budget office, and then with an elected official in Harlem, and then right now to come back into the private sector. It is a very, it's a holistic environment, and it needs to be a holistic environment. You know, we just had the gentleman from NTIA talk about federal investment. There is a part for everyone to play. There's a part for Charter Spectrum to play. There's a part for our teachers and educators to play. There's a part for our clergy to play. And so there's a part for our government to play. Some of what I do in my daily life and at work is I educate our elected partners so that they know what resources are available. We tell them that Spectrum Internet Assist, which is our low-cost internet program, is available to any New York City household in our service footprint that has a school-aged child in their home. When the pandemic hit, I know it feels like forever ago, but there was maybe 3 days between when life was kind of sort of normal and when the largest school district on the planet went virtual. The ability to lift up that ecosystem, that students, teachers, their parents, the platforms that they have to learn on, and move that to a remote setting, Herculean is not even the right word. It cannot be stated just how significant of an effort that was. You have Verizon, Comcast, Charter Spectrum, AT&T, every single one of these companies, we had a role to play. We did it in a matter of days. And for those who didn't have internet that were cost burdened, we offered 60 days of free internet. All you had to do was dial a 1-800 number. We'll get to why you didn't have it before later, but for right now, let's give you the tools that you need so your house doesn't fall behind, your bills don't fall behind, and your students and babies don't fall behind in their early childhood development. So I say all that to say we believe that the digital divide, you know, we talk about it like it's this creature off in the hilltop, but it's not. It's very real. It affects every single facet of our lives, and that's why we're so passionate about it. But the gentleman at NTIA was also mentioned about the step that it takes to educate ourselves. We have to go online. And just like we can type in, you know, what's the next event that we care about, or when is my favorite artist going to be in town for a concert, I also go online every day and Google whatever I need to find out. So we want to break down the barriers so that people aren't afraid of the internet. Yes, it's a scary world out there, but everything is scary if you let it be a barrier. We need to take responsibility for our education and for our comfort level in the digital space. And so I just encourage everyone that's here today, if you're still hesitant about it, the world isn't waiting for us. We kind of have to take ourselves and dive in. And so companies like Charter Spectrum are here to help you. Find out where those resources are. I'll continue working with our partners in government, your elected representatives, to let you know where those support services are, where those resources are, and where those dollars are. And through that partnership, you will start to see more of the transformational change that's happening in Newark, that's happening in Brooklyn, and that's happening in Harlem, in your own community, wherever that might be.
Sean, let's give it.
So I think holistically, the way that we have been thinking about it at Comcast is about digital equity and making sure that people have all the skills, the tools, as well as the access. We last year made a big announcement. We announced a 10-year commitment, a $1 billion 10-year commitment to connect 50 million low-income homes to the internet. And what this looks like for us under Project Up is in 3 different categories. There is the digital equity space of what we do with Internet Essentials, what we've done with our lift zones by creating hotspots, utilizing community anchor institutions, rec centers, senior centers, as places to improve people's digital literacy skills. There's also our work to teach the next generation of young creators. As many of you know, Comcast also has NBC Universal, and so we spend a lot of time helping young people and upcoming artists and creatives to train them up so that they can be as impactful, and have their voices heard in the larger media ecosystem. And then the last piece that we have is our commitments to small businesses. You've heard many of my peers up here talk about a variety of different ways in which we're all supporting minority-owned businesses right now. For us, that is through our grant program, through RISE, where we are providing businesses that apply access to digital skills to bring their businesses online, as well as giving them the marketing materials that they need to understand how to operate online, and of course, grants to those individual minority-owned businesses.
So now, Your Honor, we hear all of that. My question to you would be, do we view this broadband as a civil rights concern?
Yeah, I think it's a concern, right? It definitely impacts every facet of our life, whether you think it does or doesn't, it actually does. And for me, I try to, I believe in keeping it real, right? So let's keep it real, right? We're really talking about our children, in essence, right? Some of us, I was gonna say some of you, some of us, we're set in our ways, right? No matter how many devices you may or may not do it, it comes down to our children. And are we going to provide a platform and infrastructure for them not to be left behind? Because as you heard from our other distinguished panelists, the world is moving forward. And we want our children to be a part of that, and not only just be a part of it, to flourish, to create, to generate wealth, to generate opportunities. And we will only do that if we are full participants. And so as we've seen directly through this pandemic, if you don't have it, if you don't have access to it, and if it doesn't work for you, you get left behind pretty quickly. Right? I mean, yeah, it sucked to be home for 2 years and, have kids learning upstairs. But think about the families that didn't have that opportunity. Think about where the 2 years of school that they lost, K through 12. Think about the college students that lost 2 years, right? You think about the businesses. Keep it real again. Think about the churches, right? Many churches weren't streaming before the pandemic. And you have some churches that, stream worship service, they stream choirs and parts, and you could still worship on Sunday in the new normal. And so when we simplify it, we're really talking about where do we want our communities and our businesses and our families to be in the future, right? If we don't do STEM and STEAM and adopt technology and do wearables and participate in telemedicine and telehealth, you're not going to the doctor, driving to a doctor's office, sitting in a doctor's office, now waiting on test results, right? You can do all that immediately. You can actually do that while you're sitting doing something else. Research, helping your kids with homework. All right, so it really comes down to, we're impacting the quality of our lives, the ability to be competitive, and the ability to provide our children a platform for economic security for our communities. And if we don't do that, we're putting them and us behind the 8 ball, because the rest of the world is moving forward.
Wow. I want to do this. Victor, would you like to comment on that? And then we're going to open it up for questions.
Okay. Thank you so much. You've said many things here from the panelists, and they have been very, very useful. So we talk about broadband, and we talk about the services that broadband can give us in education, in healthcare, and others. I must say that I was part of the people that really did some disservice to the United States, because after we invented and developed these things, these companies took them overseas and they were manufactured. Why can't these things be manufactured here in our communities? Yeah, why can't? And so this is one of the messages that I would like you all to take back, that bring back manufacturing of this. And we can do it very cheaply in our communities, because after all, we don't need much. If you look, if you take China and you take India and others, we are as good as they are, and we can manufacture those in our own communities. So this is one thing that has been on my mind, and I know I've been also guilty about that, because when I was with this, we were talking about manufacturing because it was cheaper and so forth for us to get much more stock options and so forth. So we should now think differently. Another thing too is that the cities and the municipalities must think differently. They must give access, right of way, to black companies so that we will be able to provide the services, and we can provide those services much cheaper. So these are things that are on my mind, and I hope that with this NTIA $65 billion, these things these will be in it: manufacturing, new services, and the right of ways to be given to black enterprises and black companies.
Wow. I don't want to miss this opportunity. We're going to open it up for questions, and then we're going to hear back from the panelists who's done an outstanding job thus far. Can we all clap our hands for this great panelist that we have here today? Could I ask if we can get a mic, and then those of you, I want to give you what I share in church. 2-minute question is a 2-minute question, not a 3-hour walk down south. We're going to get the mic for you, ma'am. Can you all just form a line right here, please? Right, I'm sorry. Where would you want it? Right over here, okay, thank you. So over that side, thank you.
Hello, mine is
Just-
same question, really kind of quick. To this gentleman and this gentleman, being part of the original developers of fiber optics, one of my close friends, Sandra Bassoon, also worked at Bell Labs and holds a couple patents, right? And this too, when you're speaking about developing in a city, her idea was to kind of expand. We are uniquely situated in an impoverished community that we are lined with fiber optics throughout our entire community, but it's not used. When it happened, they went home with packets, right? They went home with paper dittos for months. And my question is to help develop, like this gentleman said, to develop companies inside of our own communities, to be servers in our own communities, to take advantage of these things for us. And we need your help with your ideas. First part of the question is, where do you see being part of the past? Where do you see the future going? We're on step 6 of this plan. Where's the next 10 steps going to be? Because we have to be that way. We have to, since we're on 6 of this plan, we need to be ahead for step 10 on the next plan, step 1 on the next plan. Where do you see that? And how can you help people like me in communities like mine, Asbury Park, New Jersey, the biggest little city in the world, right? $billion-dollar enterprise, but steps on brown people on a regular basis.
We need your question.
I'm asking it.
She's one of our chapter leaders.
I'm the president and chapter leader of Asbury Park, New Jersey. I'm asking him, where can you see the writing in of grassroots organizations into this plan? We need to be in the plan in writing. Right. So that's 2-part questions. Where do you see the next 10 steps, and how can we write ourselves in?
All right.
That's it.
I'll take the question first, and I think it's access to information that we've provided, and I've been open and transparent with you. The money's coming through the state. So if you live in New York, the money's going to come through the New York Broadband office. You need to call them today and activate with them before the money comes down to ensure that you are explaining and documenting and talking about the interests of your community, because the money's going to come through them. And not only that, demand to be a part of the process. Demand to be a part of the pre-planning process. Understand how this money can be utilized and impact unserved and underserved communities. And to do that, we've got to be able to engage, but we've got to be able to engage strategically, right? Not just going up there raising hell, right? But going up there with a plan to raise hell and have a plan of what we want coming out of it. And then, again, we're here to assist, and we'll make sure that the state is accountable for what they have to do in accordance with the rules and regulations of the program.
Where do you see the next 10 steps?
I think it really depends on us all, because what we see is that there is nothing that we cannot do. And we think that is done in India, is done in China. No, we can do it here. We also need our mayors and council folks to give us right-of-ways. We also, you see, for instance, we don't need even a spectrum, say, because this unlicensed spectrums are there. So, we don't need a spectrum. The unlicensed band is there. So all we need is Wi-Fi broadband. And so if these city mayors and so forth can give us access on poles, on the light poles and so forth, we could put base stations there and operate just like AT&T and Verizon and Comcast is operating. So I think that we have to take these things in our own hands and force the municipalities to give us free access, because the thing belongs to us anyway. And so this is what I see. And then I also ask, can we get people together and say, how can we manufacture this phone here instead of manufacturing it in China?
Yeah, I would like to
Factory
add one thing.
access.
Felicia?
That's right.
Yeah, I was just going to add to her question. She had stated that, you know, these cities do have dormant fiber under the ground. Newark was one of those cities with dormant fiber under the ground, and we took that and created this municipal broadband, which gives opportunities for Black and brown communities like Avatar and Notarius to complete the work that needs to be done at providing broadband to our underserved communities.
Next question.
This question is for the Honorable Mr. Scott. Reverend Jeffrey Benoit, Clayton Henry chapter of the National Action Network. We're talking about an enormous amount of money here, and all too often when that money is distributed, it is often distributed in a way that it wasn't provided or allocated for. What is the prevention in the plan before the money is released so that the consequences follow the money? Because again, the Biden administration now is trying to put together a plan for all the money that's been misused in the pandemic package. And again, when we do this, we lose out on what our goals are because we didn't plan for the consequences, and we know they're going to come. So let's go ahead and put a plan together so we can deal with them when they decide to show up. They're out there.
All right. Next question.
I can't hold it? Okay. Could you? All right. Hi. My name is Colette Boston, and I'm the host of Community Connection. And one of the questions I have is, how does one get into the broadband as a job or as a business? I'm not hearing about any kind of education. If somebody wants to do this, or what are the internships? What is in place so that people can get into this? So that people can get into this.
Anyone would like to answer that?
No, you don't.
I can answer a little bit about that. In the city of Newark, we have several different internship programs that we work with schools like Essex County College, Rutgers, and NJIT. There's also workforce development programs we're working on. So looking at jobs in fiber optics and networking are a good start, I believe. And we're doing that with the National Action Network.
Sure, Your Honor.
And also for the business side.
No, I can add on that from the Office of Minority Broadband Initiatives perspective. We are working, our charge, part of the office's charge is delegated by Congress, is to work with the for-profit providers that are here, with our HBCUs, with our tribal colleges, with minority-serving institutions, as the gentleman here said, to establish workforce development programs and training programs and certification programs so that our college students and people in the local community around the schools can be trained for the jobs that are needed to build out all of this infrastructure, right? And as you heard, the challenge is how can we get all of these interests at the table and collaborate, and I think we're doing that. I think today is a part of that process, but again, we are actively partnering with private providers to do just that. But we need participation. We need, the information to get out there, and we need our private partners to step up and make some of these opportunities available. Because we can train them at the schools, but there's got to be a job out there, somebody willing to hire them after they complete the program. So that's what's needed.
And what I would like to do is add to that. So Neteri is in partnership with several of the different manufacturer solutions that we use to deploy technology. So we specialize in deploying services from Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Cisco, all types of infrastructure manufacturers, which I hope we'll be able to develop some of those products ourselves, because that can be a part of that. A part of that are the apprenticeship programs. So when you're doing this, what you hear about broadband technology, there are thousands of pieces in delivering broadband technology. All a person needs to do is find that niche that they want to be a part of. If you want to do web development, programming, gaming, IoT technology, which is Internet of Things, security, broadband, Cisco routing, switches, all you need to do is put the time in. Like Scott was saying, there's a lot of money for workforce development. These are jobs that if you get the certifications like Tech World is doing, you get jobs from $65,000 to $150,000 or more a year. And all it takes you to do is commit probably 12 months to do it. So it's a recommitment, and I'm all for educating the students that are coming out of school, high school, and college, but this is also for young adults that's in their 50s. It doesn't matter what age you are in. Okay, with remote technology and remote communication, you can learn how to do web development and programming and be at your house and make anywhere between $85,000 to $200,000 a year. That's what we're talking about.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. I'm so sorry. It's so important that we follow protocol. And I know there's some more questions that you all would like to ask. And I know that individuals here, they're not going to run right out. And so the questions that you have for these panelists that are here, we have to move on. There's another panel that is waiting, and I have to follow protocol. So can we please give all of our panelists a hand? Thank you all so very much. You have helped us in a big way. All of your questions, don't leave your questions. They're coming right. All right, one last question. You got it, sister. You moved. You should have been in the men's luncheon. It's a woman's world now, so I'm sorry, bro. You got to wait in line. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, yes.
Yes,
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be at NAN 2022 before this distinguished panel. My name is Dr. Linda Gilbo. I'm representing the children, the teenagers, and the seniors in our community. My question is, we know the first 7 years are foundational, and we need to find out how we can get the daycare centers to have access to broadband, to have the equipment they need so that they can be ready for the new wave. Also, our teenagers at Jamaica.
But you got to give me your question, though.
My question is, I want the grant. I want to sign them up. There's 2 schools, early.
But you still got to give me your question.
All right, I want to know how these 2 daycare centers for the children, the library for the teenagers, Jamaica Library, and the churches for the seniors can get access to this money, to these products, so we can raise all our people up into this technology.
All right. Now, I'm sure one of them can answer that question, but ma'am, we have to move on because Trudy is standing here trying to get the next panel. Someone, I'm sure, from the panelists will be able to address that question. Will y'all do that for me, please? All right, so let's give them a hand as they're coming to a conclusion. Thank you all so much. I'm sorry. We could talk all day on this. Thank you. God bless you.
All right, we're going to ask that everyone not rush the stage because I will physically come up and escort you out. But we do have 2 panels happening simultaneously beginning in the next 2 minutes. And this room will be the Health and Wellness in the Wake of COVID panel. And across the hall in Empire West will be a panel on anti-gun violence. So if you are interested in health and wellness in the wake of COVID, you stay in this room. If you want to participate in the anti-gun violence, you can do that across the hall. Thank you so much. I need everybody to clear in front of the stage. Excuse me.
I'm sorry, I don't have anyone.
Everyone to clear the front of the stage. We have to set the next panel. I need everyone right here. Everyone to clear the stage. You can meet them in the lobby. Thank you so much.
What's up, brother? How you doing, man? God bless you, man. Hey, how you doing, sister? Enjoy you. Okay. Okay. She's putting everybody, setting it up. Everybody up. Dr. English? That's me. Okay. Sit on your all right. Yes, sir. Right here. Yeah. All right.
Did Dr. Kane show up? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to... thank you.
I see Mickey out there. Yeah. J-Mo should have spoken to Mickey if he was trying. He did. Yeah, I told him. And I have some bottle water under here. Great. Oh. I have bottle water under here. You? Yes, it is. I have some bottled water. You're welcome. Oh. Got a phone? Got a photo shot. She's trying to get you. Ah. Yeah, go ahead. She's trying to get you. What's going on, brother? That's what they call me. On a good day. All right. Yeah.
I'm just going to slide that over to give Reverend Bowie some shine, too.
All right, thank you. Yeah. Look out now. Thank you, dear.
You're welcome.
I'll take all of it.
And Reverend, there's some bottled water right under there for
yes.
you, okay?
Oh, thank
Let me
you.
grab one for somebody.
No problem. Listen, I'm following your lead. I know how to stay in my lane. Okay.
They will give you the cue when they're
Yes.
ready to roll.
All right, thank you.
We're going to get them.
All right. Yeah, we'll have a good time here. Hopefully we'll save some lives today. Some people will leave here better than they were than they came.
That's right. That's all we can hope for, right?
That's right. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yes, you can. No, thank you.
Reverend Jefferson.
Mute concerts, promote me.
Oh, really? See the baby out.
Wow.
Yeah. But everybody.
Enjoy you.
I mean,
Al does fights now, right?
Yep.
He doesn't do music anymore.
it's like, come on now.
We should talk to him about doing some more stuff then.
But it's all right. God will fix it. I'm not even
No
worried
problem,
about
brother.
that.
Yeah,
He's gonna fix that.
Mm-hmm. He's gonna fix it. And we're gonna
gotta get the right
put
people in the
Sarah.
room.
So now, the Sarah.
Yeah.
When I went in there and I told
You know what's
her,
interesting when people come and say, like, people
as
sitting
soon
in
as
the
I'm
back?
working,
I
I
ain't
said,
never
hello,
seen that.
secretary. I said, you
I
have been praying
always,
for you.
I don't care
And he
when.
said,
I matter of fact, I was
"Have
at a
you?" I
revival
said,
one time. They had a
"I
room,
said,
front row, back up, stage
you know,
reserve.
from
I
the
said, no, I'm
beginning of you coming on and
too many people fall and die
all of
for
the
me to
stuff
be up in
that
the front. Why the hell would I be in the back?
and I read all about you because I did. And I said, God, if this man is the right man, let him do it because it looks like he
They really are.
That's
Yeah.
when I was and I said, and I knew that you understood community.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I said, and that was my biggest concern with whoever the
Good evening. I just got the word that we will begin. So, give yourself a hand for being here. We thank God for each and every one of you have come out because what we will be dealing with may determine whether you live or die as we continue to move forward through this time of COVID and we address health and wellness in the wake of COVID. How many of you have lost someone that you know personally during the COVID pandemic? Hey,
Lord,
that's right. And just as early as last week, I lost one of my loved ones. So this thing is real. But the thing about it, how many of you know that we can do something to keep from being in that number of the 1 million? How many of you know that you can do something? That's right. And that's why we're here this evening. Amen. First, I want to thank the leader of this great organization, Reverend Dr. Al Sharpton. Let's give him a hand. I don't know about you, but I've been having the time of my life here at this convention. I've had a wonderful time. Then after that, I'd like to take this time for the individual who actually had the brain to pull this thing together, which is one of our panelists, Mr. Tony Wayford here. Yes.
Y'all, please make some noise for me. Thank you.
And then I'd also like to take the time, and they will all introduce themselves and let you know who they are, what they've been doing, and they can do that best. We want to give them a round of applause because they've been on the front line during this time, saving lives. Well, you've heard enough from me, and let's move forward. And at this time, we're going to have the panelists introduce themselves. The last person to introduce themselves will be Dr. Virginia Kane, but we will start in alphabetical order and we'll skip over Dr. Kane. And I believe everyone, if you don't have a booklet, I will let you know, all right? I believe Mr. Kevin Anaskovich, that's A. I did learn that. I didn't get too much further past that in the alphabet, but I did get the A. So at this time, we'll have him introduce himself, give us about a minute or two where you're able to let us know who you are and what you do.
Thank you very much, Reverend. Thank you all for attending as well. We're very excited about the opportunity to speak both as a panel and field any questions as well as we think through how to address health equity broadly in this environment. And mind you, it's Health Equity Awareness Week, so this is a timely panel. My name is Kevin Anaskovich. I'm the president and CEO of Jumo Health. Jumo Health is a medical communications company. We work with pharmaceutical companies as they develop and market their products. And when we talk about developing products, we talk about clinical trials. And our role in that place is to create actionable, authentic, and relatable educational resources that not only explain the disease, but what is expected of someone when they enter a clinical trial. And we do this in age-appropriate ways. We do this being culturally sensitive, and I'd like to thank actually Tony from that perspective. Tony and I met during our work on COVID-19 clinical trials, and he was wonderful in educating me and my organization about how to look at culture, how to be able to change tone and language, how to be able to layer in perspective into the works that we produce so people can see themselves in the materials and have a path to action. And that's something we really want to continue to do and press the industry on. So We are a global organization. We don't just work in the US. We work in about 75 countries. Our information has been translated into over 90 languages. And really just grateful and blessed that I've been asked to speak on the panel and to talk with y'all today. Thank you.
All right.
Good afternoon, Nan.
Good afternoon.
My name is Reverend Dr. Q English. I'm the director of the Center for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, where the Honorable Javier Becerra serves as the secretary. I'm based in D.C. Our office exists to strengthen the response of faith and community organizations to critical public health and human service issues. I just want to go real quickly over the 5 initiatives that we have this year. One, obviously, is our continued work around COVID-19, increasing vaccinations and boosters. 2, maternal health, and that is supporting the goal to reduce maternal mortality and severe morbidity and expand nationwide access and coverage for high-quality maternal health services. Why are we doing that? Is because the U.S. leads in maternal mortality out of all the developed nations in the world. And Black women, maternal mortality rate is 3 to 4 times that of white women. Our third focus is substance use disorder, inclusive of overdose prevention and prenatal abstinence syndrome. The COVID-19 pandemic was experienced with particular hardship among those with problematic substance use. In 2020, the rate of drug overdose deaths accelerated and increased 31% from the year before, usually from opioids, but also increasingly from the use of more than one drug at the same time, or polysubstance use. And from September 2019 to September 2020, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reported nearly 90,000 overdose deaths in the United States. The next point that we're looking at is focus in mental health in youth. Our country faces an unprecedented mental health crisis among people of all ages, but according to the National Alliance of Mental Illness, 1 in 6 youth aged 6 to 17 experience a mental illness each year. And 50% of all lifetime mental illness begins by age 14. Our next focus area is that of suicide prevention. It was really an atrocity here. It was reported in the U.S. emergency rooms an uptick of 51% of adolescents with suicide attempts. The girls ages 12 to 17, and 4% with our adolescent boys. And then our last focus area, I think that was all the focus area. I'm going to stop here because I'm going to continue the conversation as we go. But suicide prevention, maternal health, mental health in youth is an area, and obviously continued conversations around boosters and vaccinations. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. At this time, we're going to have none other than Miss Deborah Frazier Howell.
That's her.
Introduce herself. Yeah.
Hi, family.
Hello.
They've called me the mother of many movements. and there's a reason for that. I founded the National Black Leadership Commission on AIDS in 1987, when nobody was talking to our community about AIDS. I grew that agency for 21 years, all across the country. I advised 2 sitting presidents. I wrote a piece of legislation called the Minority HIV/AIDS Initiative that has continued to pump billions of dollars into the community around HIV and AIDS. When I left the National Black Leadership Commission on AIDS, I went to private industry. I went to OraSure Technologies, a diagnostics company in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. I was born and raised in Harlem, by the way. That diagnostic company allowed me to be the Senior Vice President of Government and External Affairs, the only Black woman in the boardroom for many, many years. I had some say in the priorities that we did. I brought the first HIV rapid at-home test over the counter. You can get it at the drugstore, wipe your gums, and tell you what your result is for HIV and AIDS in 20 minutes. I brought the first Ebola test to Africa. Had them to develop a test that would give you your Ebola results immediately. We had a problem with Ebola because in Africa, you have to bury where Ebola was. They believed in burying people immediately after death. And what we had was the CDC coming into the homes of people in Africa and removing their mothers' and fathers' bodies. And there's the belief that you go to hell if you don't get buried immediately. So people in Africa stopped telling the CDC that their people were dying. And as a result, the whole family would die. So we had to create a rapid test so that when somebody died, you could immediately stick the test in their mouth and you would know within 15 minutes whether that person died from Ebola or died from something else. It allowed us to give the people back their families' bodies so they could do what they knew were supposed to be doing with their bodies. Mother of many movements. I left there then, retired again, and went to seminary, where I said, after all of this, death and dying, and all the work that I'm doing, God must be in this somewhere. So let me sit down and talk to him. And then one day I was sitting in my house watching television and saw them putting black bodies in black bags in black refrigerator trucks in New York City. And I said, not on my watch. Cannot happen. And I got up, wrote a proposal, took it to Quest Diagnostics, all the things that I had done before in my life, starting Blacker, doing diagnostics, came together for this one moment. I believe in God.
Come on.
And I believe that God brings things together for this seminal moment. And it was in that moment that I was able to write a proposal that eventually got another $9 million from HRSA, $4.2 million from Quest, and another $5 million from other companies, and allowed me to directly fund 120 churches in 13 states, so that they can hire black people on the ground to go out and do testing and vaccines, and now they're pivoting. These people are now certified. They can go anywhere in the world and get a job. So I'm watching this now, and the question that I have for you all, I need you all, family, to become mothers and fathers of a movement. People tend to throw money at us for a problem and then walk away.
That's right.
We can't allow that to happen. Never again should we find ourselves in this position where we have black bodies in black bags and black refrigerator trucks. Never again. People always tell us that, oh, we can't wait to go back to normal. Yeah. We're not going back to normal. We died in normal. We're going to have a new normal. It's going to be something different. There has to be a new paradigm so we can keep our people alive. So we're going to be talking today, and it's going to be very conversational, but I want you to keep in mind who you are and whose you are. Because there's nothing wrong with us as a community. We're not bankrupt. We got everything we need to fix every problem that we have, and no one's going to save us but us.
That's right.
So remember this one last thing. I saw a little boy on stage, and he came up, and somebody was sort of introducing him, and in his bio, they were talking about how, rough time he had. He's 15 years old, and at the end they said, and he comes from a fatherless home. And it struck me, his answer, because it all depends on how you see yourself. He got up, and the first thing he said is, my home is not fatherless, it's motherful.
All right.
And that's where I want you to be. Help the mothers of the movement.
Amen. Listen, Jesus, she done brought Jesus in the room. All right now. Okay, at this time, as we continue to move forward, we have Miss Deborah Frazier. How?
No.
Oh, no. Deborah Wayford.
Yes.
I was just checking to make sure you're from Wayford.
Good afternoon, everyone. So you're getting me mixed up with Deborah Frazier Howe and Tony Wayford. So, and I'm not related to either one of them, but they're our very good friends. So my name is Deborah Wayford, and I am a nurse practitioner and a physician's assistant. And currently, I work for Gilead Sciences, and we are a biotech company in California. California that makes medications for the treatment of COVID. You guys probably heard about remdesivir, which is a drug for that. And we also make medications for other viruses like HIV and hepatitis. So I'm here really as a health educator, which is how I started before I started treating patients. And I just want to talk a little bit. I guess the other thing I should mention is that I'm the chair of the board of the organization that Deborah founded, the National Black Leadership Commission on Health. So I'm also the chair of that board. But, and I feel like a baby compared to all other things folks have said up here, but I'm just here to say, taking care of people, Black people, is something that I have a passion about and something that I've been doing my whole life. And I always remember something that my father said, and that was, and I know you guys have heard this, that when white people have a cold, Black people got pneumonia. And we just saw that with what happened with COVID. And I just want us to know that we have a moment in time right now to do something about that, because we're talking about health equity. We're talking about Black people dying. That's not new for us. That's been going on the whole time. But right now, people are paying attention to it. And now is when we need to get moving and getting people educated about health. And health disparities is not new, but it's something that I think we need to start paying more closer attention to, educating our families and educating our communities so that we can live healthy lives. Thank you.
A moment of privilege. Mr. Wayford, it looks like Dr. Kane has arrived.
Yes.
So we'll let Dr. Kane speak. All right.
Okay. So listen, I was in the airport in Indiana from 4 o'clock to 1 in the morning. Oh, Lord. And I was on the plane twice, and they even offered me to get on another plane, first class, and I said, I'll take it, no problem. Got on that plane. We were in the air for about 30 minutes, and they returned us because I guess of the bad weather here in New Jersey. So it's taken me a while to get here today, but I think you deserve having my attention today. And just to say, I don't know if did you give me a little introduction? Can I say who I am?
Yes. Oh, yes, of course.
All right, well, I'm a infectious disease physician. I'm on the faculty at Indiana University School of Medicine, Infectious Diseases. But I also, if you've heard of the National Medical Association, that's the oldest and Black physician group in the country. I chair the infectious disease section of that organization, and I'm on our COVID task force for the NMA, as well as being on the task force for an organization called the Links Incorporated. But I'm an old person working in the HIV arena. I set up the first educational program for physicians across the country for HIV. And I was privileged to have President Obama place me on the National Federal Committee for HIV, where it was so important to see a lot of our HIV dollars going into a lot of white communities, but if you were in the South or in the rural areas, you didn't have access to those Ryan White dollars. So it's just so important for us to be really critical getting those dollars. And my God, with the COVID-19, can I tell you about that? We went from over 1,000 homeless to over 2,000 and some people homeless in Indianapolis just in a matter of minutes. And when that billions of dollars first came out to help and subsidize people, it wasn't us able to get that money. Harvard could get $400 million. Right. Some of the big corporations, I don't want to say with the big A, they got $500-some million. But if you were like a barbershop owner or something like that, entrepreneur, and you needed that documentation to get that bank loan, don't meet much. We didn't even get funding in that first round of the dollars. So you got to understand how critical you are. We've got to have safe housing for our folks. Okay, we got to work on those social determinants of health. We got to figure out how to make that transportation work for us. And my God, we're always on the front line jobs. We're the ones at the highest exposure for any of these infectious diseases. And that's why we're in the hospitals almost 3 times our white counterparts. We're dying at twice the amount as our white counterparts. And then, you know, sometimes we got to argue to just get a treatment even when you're in the hospital.
Well, thank you, Dr. Kane. Amen. Last but far from least, Mr. Tony Wade.
That's right. If y'all think I'm gonna wax eloquent as them, y'all got another thing coming. Thank everybody for I want to thank first of all you guys for being here. He's sitting out there because too often when we talk about health, folk don't want to talk about it. I thank everybody on this panel because fortunately when I call, they come. Because I ain't the guy with the MD or the PhD, I'm the guy with the GED. And but I realized years ago, guys, I started working in HIV like everybody else. Because Deborah actually invited me. Deborah, on both ends, I was going to meetings and I was finding out what was happening to black people in HIV. And I was sitting in the meeting, I'm listening, I'm thinking like most folk, I ain't HIV positive, I don't shoot drugs, I ain't gay, I ain't got nothing to do with this. But what happened for me was my awakening, because I had to ask myself, do you love all black people or is there a certain group of black people you like? And that was my calling card. I knew I had to fight for all black people at that point. Right. And in LA, I don't know about here, but in LA, if you was HIV positive and you lived in West Hollywood where all the white folks were, you got Meals on Wheels from Wolfgang Puck. You got housing opportunity. They even had a thing called dog walking service. If you didn't feel good, they'd come walk your dog. But if you was black and had HIV in South Central, you couldn't get a Happy Meal. That was a problem for me. And so what I decided at that point, no, I'm serious. What I decided at that point was who was going to speak for us? And at the time, too, black women were disproportionately impacted. And I got 3 daughters. So I asked myself, well, what kind of daddy would I be if I sit on the sideline and I don't say something? I ain't going down like that. Because I used to even have that conversation with their boyfriend. What's happening, man? What you into? Because, hey, I'm just being real with y'all. Because my daughter, I know they were sexually active, and I know they were doing what they were doing. I used to tell them, look, partner, whatever you into, you need to be honest with her, because if she get infected, we're going to move some furniture. I ain't calling my lawyer, because I ain't got one of them. We're going to do something different. And then when COVID hit, and I spent all this time in HIV, when COVID hit, y'all, back in May, I lost 5 family members in 14 days. And I ain't talking about cousins removed twice. I'm talking about 2 brothers, a nephew, and a niece. And I thought to myself, now is a hell of a time for us to actually raise our voices, because COVID exposed what we all know. Disproportionately, we're impacted by every disease state known to man. And if folks scared to talk about, if they're scared to say black, well, let's use the data. The data affirms that what I'm saying is true as it relates to black people. But we at some point have to raise our voice, because 2 things I am, y'all: unapologetically black and unashamedly Christian. And I'm going to go down, since I get oppressed because I'm black, I'm going to liberate myself in the name of being black. So again, I thank everybody, because again, I've been extremely fortunate, because everybody up here has helped me with what I want. And I'm saying this for those that are sitting there and think, well, what can I do? I ain't no doctor, I ain't no inmate. All you got to do is open your mouth, man. I'm telling you, because ain't nobody coming, y'all. And I think it's up to us to create the good world that we all want and deserve to live in. That's me. Yeah.
So at this time, with all these wonderful people here, I've got to make a decision who will speak first. So at this time, since Dr. Kane was last, and I think Jesus said those who were first would be last, and those who were last would be first. Dr. Kane, will you kick us off?
I worry about him, guys. Is he all right? All right, okay, well, we got to have some testimony here in order to say that. This COVID really put out some glaring areas for us that we didn't realize. And that when you look at all these emerging pathogens, we started with SARS in Canada. We had H1N1 that happened in 2009. We had Ebola virus that happened in 2013. We had that Zika virus, okay, that was causing brain damage to newborn babies, you know, from related to the mosquitoes. We've had West Nile virus that causes meningitis. And now with this coronavirus mutation, what am I telling you? I'm telling you 5 years from now, we're going to have another major pathogen, a virus, bacteria, or whatever. And it could be even way more deadly than this coronavirus. 80 million people, 80 million people, and just since this virus started, we've had those many cases, 80 million people. And of course, we're the ones that are filling the emergency rooms. We're the ones in the critical care units. We're the ones, when we needed to get tested, we couldn't find a place to test ourselves for the SARS. And then unfortunately, you know, they tell you in the emergency room, well, if you got symptoms, don't come to the ERs because you might be sick and whatever.
Yeah,
and so how can you go get tested? And even when you go to get tested, I think I've got this coronavirus. No, you don't have it. And of course, they're coming in 2 days later, comatose and dying from COVID. And you can even have family members say, I heard about this new treatment. You know, why am I not getting this treatment? And they have to argue with you. And then by the time they say, well, I think you're right, you've passed the time where you were eligible to even get the drug, and people have died. One of our leading ministers died as a result of that happening in Indianapolis. And I say this to say, we're going to have to do more. It's not enough for you to take care of yourself individually, taking care of your family members, taking care of your friends. We're going to have to be activists. You're going to have to step up to the plate and advocate. You can't look around and say, oh, I'm going to let somebody else speak up for us, and somebody's going to speak up so I don't have to say anything and I can just, you know, stay on the sidelines. Well, stand on the sidelines is like you're seeing someone visibly killing someone and you don't open up your mouth and you don't stop it from happening. So when you don't say nothing and you can see someone killing someone visibly and you're doing nothing to prevent that, that's essentially what's happening with us as Black Americans in our communities. The other thing I got to tell you, we've got to get, I shouldn't say this. Well, no, I'm trying to figure out what I can say and what I can't say. You can say whatever you want. But I think we have to get in with those policymakers. We have to have more policymakers who have our perspective, our culture, our reality, in order to bring those necessary resources that we need to have. Mm-hmm. And we got to get that pipeline. We need to start grooming people early, thinking about this. You know, be a mayor of a city. Be someone on city council. Be a state representative. And things of those nature. But the most important thing for you to be healthy, believe in the science. You have to believe in the science, okay?
Yeah.
And I tell you now, not all science, not all recommendations are bad, all right? I have a young sister, a miracle. A sister that was a miracle who called me at 9 o'clock at night. I'm from a small little town in Arkansas. It's 59,999 people when I'm not there. She called me at 9 p.m. at night and said, I can't see. So I'm saying, oh, you know, it's just probably, we have a lot of thunderstorms, tornadoes, and whatever. I said, don't worry about it, but let me call your neighbor. I called the neighbor, and the neighbor said, well, the lights are all on in your house. So that scared the daylights out of me, and she couldn't see. And I say, well, let me call the ambulance. You need to get to the hospital and go to our hospital and let them check you out. Now, you would think that someone is totally blind and there's an eye doctor that's supposed to be on call would come in and see her and check her out. Well, in my little town, I guess she needed to be white for someone to come in, but they said they did the CAT scan and they sent it to India for them to read it. And they said she was fine, and I knew she wasn't fine. So I got there the next day, drove 1 hour's drive to get to Little Rock where the medical center was. She had had a stroke, okay? She lost her eyesight, and not only did she lose her eyesight, but she shot out blood clots to her kidneys, so she had kidney failure as well. And she almost died in those 24 hours because they couldn't control her blood pressure. But if I hadn't gone down there, she would be dead. And so I'm just saying, there's great medical care out there, and they're great providers. Some of you, I know you must have some good doctors, right, that are taking care of you, but we got to do more. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Dr. King.
I just had to add, since when you said trust in science and medicine, you know, I got all my shots, especially after all them folk died in my family, right? And it was interesting how we actually got to talk to each other, convince each other to go to the doctor. I got all my shots. Matter of fact, they come over with another one, I'm getting that too. I was trying to talk to my little brother, right? I'm telling him about, man, you need to get shot. Well, Tony, I don't know about what's in it. Well, you buy dope off the street. Now you worried about what's in the pill. You know, but I had to tell him, you buying weed off the street, but you worried about what's in the pill. You ain't been to medical school, but all of a sudden you concerned about that. But we have to have serious conversation with each other, straight and raw like that, because to Deborah's credit, she taught me how to go to the doctor, because I wasn't going. You know what I mean? I feel bad. I give me some water and sit in the dark for a while. You know what I mean? Self-medicate. But it's little things that's triggers. And I was talking to Deborah one day, we were laughing about this downstairs. My sinus was bothering me. I'm snotting and going. Deborah going like, damn, what's wrong with you? I said, man, my sinus is whatever. She said, Tony, you need to go to the doctor. And you know, because I'm generally hard on, you know, I'm race conscious. And she said one thing that clicked in my brain. She said, Tony, you got all this medicine stuff to be treated. Do you realize white people ain't gonna be uncomfortable for 5 minutes? And I thought about it, I said, you know, it's time for me to go to the doctor. Went to the doctor, and she, Deborah, they showed me how to go, because I didn't know, I got insurance, and I'm a little bit above average intelligence. And they showed me how to go in there and talk to the doctor, because we know they got X number of minutes to talk to you. But I learned how to go in there, the doctor come in there, hey, how your mama doing? You're fine, how your mama doing? And we got to have some conversation first. You can't just look at the thing and just, you know, not look at me and talk to me. But what happened was, no, I'm serious. It sounds funny, but we created a relationship. He gave me a cell phone number, and it empowered me, because from that point on, I understood how to go and how to advocate for myself. And then when my mama got restless soul, died a few years back, I was able to take her to the doctor and talk to the physician. And I'm telling him, you know, yo, if you're good at what you do, you can explain it to me, man.
Right.
It ain't that deep because you got on that coat. Yeah. And I think once we learn how to do that, because there ain't no magic and mystery to this. All you got to do is ask and raise the questions and challenge each other. We do it in an ethical kind of way, but we have to challenge each other, because all white people ain't waking up figuring out what they're going to do to us. There's some ones out there we got to watch now, don't get me wrong. But I'm just saying, but it's up to us. If we don't rescue and reconstruct ourselves, I don't know who will, y'all.
All right. Okay. Thank you there, Mr. Wayford. At this time, we're going to hear from Reverend Dr. Q English. And then also what I'd like to say to everyone on the panel, you know there's a lot that all these experts have to say, but we need to also remember we've got some others, so I don't want to cut you short, but we need to also realize, so as we talk, get as much as you can in so we can hear from everyone. Equal opportunity, right? Yeah. Talking about equity. All right.
And he has to say that right before I go, so.
No.
No, I'm just kidding. I want to tackle this more from continuing that federal level piece, and I want you to know some of the things that are coming as a result. We have to understand that far too many children and youth have lost a loved one, and it's estimated that as of June 2021, more than 140,000 children in the U.S. had lost a parent or grandparent caregiver to COVID. Wow. That's a lot. And then when you think about what I had mentioned earlier, that the National Center for Health Statistics suggests that there were tragically more than 6,600 deaths by suicide among the 10 to 24 age group, 10 to 24 in 2020. So suicide is the second leading cause of death among young people, and it was the 10th leading cause of death in the nation in 2019, according to CDC. But this is what we're doing, and this is what I want you to hear. Health and Human Services announced critical investments to implement upcoming 988 dialing code for a national suicide prevention lifeline. So the current 10-digit number is going to become a 3-digit dialing code 988. It's going to be available nationally for calls, for texts, for chat. It's anticipated to be operational in 2022, and it marks a significant step forward in strengthening access to care for 39 million Americans who experience suicidal, mental health, and substance use challenges each year. And so standing up the 988 dialing code is a key part of the Biden-Harris administration's focus on ensuring that those in crisis have someone to call, someone to respond, and somewhere to go. And Secretary Becerra said, we want people to think of 988 as a place to go for those who need it in a moment of crisis. The second piece I'm going to share with you, and this is where I'm going to stop. You heard me talk about mental health. You know, it's sort of like the elephant in the room. We got to think about what's been happening since COVID, and mental health issues and disorder has been on the uptick. And so one of the things that we deal with as Black people is stigma. Come on, even Black on Black. I grew up in Spanish Harlem, 106th Street, Madison Avenue, in Carver Projects, and there, you know, my whole neighborhood was drug-ridden, but we did not talk about these issues. One study showed that 63% of Black people believe that a mental health condition is a sign of personal weakness. And as a result, people may experience shame about having a mental illness and worry that they may be discriminated against due to their condition. Fear also could prevent people from seeking mental health care when they really need it. And I'm a reverend doctor, and sometimes we even put that stigma in our own houses of worship, so I can talk freely in that, where we don't allow that conversation to mingle with the fact that, yes, our people need mental health care as well. And not even just say our people, we need mental health care as well. One of the things that we grew up with that I consider one of the most dangerous statements, a one-liner, what goes on in the house, what goes on in the house stays in the house. It's been one of the most damaging statements that I grew up with, because some things need to come out of the house.
Right. That's right.
I mean, we went through some, and this is my last story, we went through some horrific things in our household. And so we're wondering why we're checking all the boxes for ACEs, or adverse childhood events that led our sisters and brothers to the substance use disorder, that led to the different things that, you know, they're struggling with today, the suicidal ideations. I had a horrific thing happen to me, and we know what happened. I went upstairs, told my mother went out to try to find the perpetrator, couldn't find it. We sat down, we had dinner, I washed dishes, I went to sleep, went to school the next day. There was no talk at all about any counselor, about calling even 911. Why? Because what went on in the house stayed in the house, and some things need to come out of the house. I'm going to leave it there.
One of the most important things for me in coming today was to listen. I think all too often we like to talk. We like to wax poetic on our 2 cents, and we have to take a moment to pause.
That's right.
And understand so we can move forward together. You can hear the passion on this panel. We spoke earlier downstairs, and one thing that came up, you've heard folks talk about HIV/AIDS. That's where a lot of us got our start. Okay. And I think that there's a movement here, or a moment for us. Ryan White, you heard Dr. Kane mention him before.
Could you tell them what Ryan White is? I don't think this audience necessarily knows that.
Sure. Ryan White was a 9-year-old white boy who contracted HIV from hemophilia. And all of a sudden, the federal floodgates opened for money.
That's right.
That's where I got my start. I was helping block grants get diffused down into the communities. And so that was my first kind of experience to see that. There is an interesting movement here for COVID, if you listen to the panelists, that we have an opportunity, I think, to pounce on. There is a moment in time for us to walk through that door, to collaborate. One of the things that Jumo Health does is work in over 125 different health conditions. Not because we're experts in it, because we know how to collaborate with the experts, because we know how to bring people to the table and move forward. That's what we should do today. That's what this panel hopefully will be able to bring back into the communities once we leave here today. So I'll stop there.
Well, thank you. How many of y'all know ain't nobody coming for us what?
But us.
But us.
And that's real. All right. All right. Okay, at this time, we're going to have Miss Deborah Fraser Howes speak, and then after that, we'll hear from Miss Deborah Wafer.
Okay.
Well, one thing that I'd like to say, we need you.
That's right.
I started out saying that we have what we need in our community already. We are not a bankrupt community.
Yeah.
So let me first talk to the brothers in the audience. Men, we need you. Your life expectancy has decreased by 3 years in the midst of this COVID madness.
That's right.
We can't afford to lose our brothers.
That's right.
That's a major issue. We should be hopping mad about that nobody is continuing to talk about it. Nobody is moving something forward where we can capture those 3 years back for our black men who die faster than white men anyway. We need you, men, because we need you to advocate. And let me tell you about the black man and advocating. When I came up with Choose Healthy Life, there were two people that I called, Reverend Al Sharpton and Reverend Calvin Butts. And I told them, you two, the activists and the academic preachers, have to come together right now. And usually people say when Deborah called, just do it, because she ain't gonna leave you alone until it gets done. But these two men came together and helped us put together this program that focused on these 120 churches in 13 states. We vaccinated, as I said, and tested over 100,000 people in 6 months. When people said, where's the vaccine? We can't get the vaccine in our community. It was Reverend Sharpton who picked up the phone and called the governor. And we had vaccines the next day. It was Reverend Butts who called up on the phone to the mayor. And we had vaccines in areas of this city that they call testing deserts. It is those two men who put this together, and it made me think, you know, when I was a single mother, all my kids are grown now, when they were younger, I realized something very young at a very young age as a woman with raising boys. I realized that I could take them to the bathroom, but I couldn't teach them how to aim.
That's right.
We need you men.
That's right.
To lead this advocacy for us.
Yes.
We need you to stand up and say, no more, never again.
That's right.
We need you at the city council meetings. We need you writing to Washington. We need you to call an emergency meeting of the Congressional Black Caucus and say, never again will we allow our women and children to die in the streets like they did over COVID.
That's right.
It's time to do that. We have what we need. We don't need anything else. Dr. Kane talked about people who couldn't get the medicine. Somebody got to the medicine. His name was Trump. They gave him medicine quick. And then he stood up he stood up holding Bibles and stuff like Jesus Christ. But black woman sitting in the hospital can't get the medicine she needs to stay alive. It sounds a little like Tuskegee. So when people come to me and say, oh, black people need to stop talking about Tuskegee, I said, no, we need to stop calling it Tuskegee because it was the American government's experiment, not Tuskegee. Tuskegee didn't do that to themselves. So there's a couple of things. We need you men to stand up and do what's necessary. And women, we need to help them understand what's going to be necessary. So I write legislation, I create programs. That's what God told me to do. That's the gift he gave me. But you got a gift.
That's right.
Whatever that gift is, give it to that man and let that man go out there and help us.
I love it. All right.
We are in a meeting right now with over 1,000 people, and we're not signing a petition to the federal government saying never again. We're going to fix that next year, right, Michael? Michael's sitting in the back. We're going to fix that next year. Because we shouldn't be this many of us in one place where we're not pushing the government to do exactly what it is we need to do.
That's right.
My daughter has just become one of the deputy mayors of this city, a city that she's grown up in, Sheena Wright. And I'm watching them struggling with Eric Adams to make everything right. It's hard when you inherit a mess to sit it right. And they always give us the mess. I remember when Barack came into, President Obama came in, he was in a mess. Fiscal crisis. My 401k turned into a 301k. And I was mad as all get out. But he had to come in there under all that pressure. So we got the same pressure going on here. Every time you see a black man and a black woman rise up, you know, Denzel told Smith the other day, be careful, my brother, because it's when you at the top of your game that the devil shows up.
All right.
We can fight back against the devil. The Reverend Sharptons and the Reverend Butts fought back against the devil with no fear. As Tony said, unapologetically. They were two black men that I was proud to be in the room with. So all we need to do is harness that kind of energy, and I promise you I'm going to try to do my best with the 120 churches, and Q is certainly going to help me. Tony and everybody else on this panel is going to work together.
That's right.
But there's something that you need to do. When you see us standing up raising hell, be with us.
That's right.
Yes. Don't turn the channel. Don't say, oh, it's good what they're doing. Say, how do I get involved and be there for us to help save our lives? Please do that for us.
So I just want to turn the conversation a little bit about nobody's coming for us, all right? We have to save ourselves. And one of the things I'd like to highlight is what happened when we got the vaccine and how a lot of black people didn't want to take the vaccine, right? And a lot of people didn't want to take the vaccine because all of a sudden they wanted to know what was in it. And all of a sudden they were suspicious. But people didn't even talk about one of the researchers who discovered the vaccine was a black woman, right? And I think that's something we should have led with, right? Is that everything that happens is not about white people. We can take care of ourselves, and we have to take care of ourselves. So that's one thing. The second thing is that we have got to do more in educating our children about science. We have to do more because we can start to talk about science, we can have young people doing research, and we need to build a pipeline in the black community for the next generation of medical providers. There are a whole lot of people getting ready to retire as doctors, nurse practitioners, and PAs, and there's going to be a void. I mean, they're talking about now all these baby boomers are going into health care, and there's not enough people to take care of them. So who do you think is going to suffer? It's going to be us.
Right.
And so we have to start talking to our children about background training to get into healthcare. Everybody doesn't have to be a physician, and everybody doesn't have to be a nurse. But we got to be something, right? And we got to be something that pays the bills. We have to be those folks that are messengers in the medical community that know how to talk to the patients when they come in there. And I remember when I worked at UCLA in the HIV clinic, and I was the only black person in there. And when I would come to the clinic with my white coat on, you'd see the black people look like, who is is she? You know, can I see that black lady? And I know, but Dr. Kane knows what I'm talking about. I'm looking at Dr. Rollins. We all know what that feels like when you're in a place where patients feel comfortable. So my plea today is for us to think about how are we going to take care of ourselves? Because we have to do all the things that Deborah and everybody else has talked about civically, but also on a real level, we need to think about the pipeline of new people coming into education. The one last thing I'll leave with is around clinical trials. Deborah brought up Tuskegee, which was a government research trial. And now when we have research, black people don't want to go into research trials, even though you have like black doctors who are coming up with some of these research trials. We need to rethink that, and we need to get involved in those research trials in the beginning, not when they come and they need people enrolled, but when they're thinking about what questions need to be answered and what solutions are we trying to come up with. And I say that because when medicines are approved, then black people say, well, wasn't no black people in the trial. So I'm not taking the medicine.
Right.
All right, so I'm not taking the vaccine. But then if we're not in there, then when are we going to ever find out what works for us?
Right.
Right.
And I think that's what I want to leave everybody with.
You know what? Can I just say one thing? Because one thing Deborah said to just now that made me come back to the men in our lives. Jesse Jackson the other day, he said to me, you know, everybody's talking about what's in the vaccine, what's in the vaccine. They want to know what's in the vaccine. I ain't taking it because I don't know what's in it. He said, you don't know what's in that Cavassier and that Hennessy you drink it either. And you drink that. I just want to throw that out there. That's a real perspective of where we are.
Can I make
Thank
one?
you
Can I make
for
can I-
that.
Can I make one last comment?
Of
too?
course
Just
you
so
can,
clear?
Dr. King.
All right, so, you know, we don't teach history to our children and our kids. Everybody's heard of a blood transfusion, how important it is. If you're in an accident, you need a blood transfusion. You're going to have surgery, you might need a blood transfusion. So that may be one of the most important scientific achievements in the world. But do you know that a black man, Dr. Charles Drew, was the one who revolutionized blood transfusions for this country,
That's right.
and we wouldn't have that achievement without him. And we got to do more of that education because, hey, there was a black man that helped to revolutionize how to do kidney transplants out of New York. So there's so many discoveries and developments from people of different racial and ethnic populations that we can be very proud of and feel comfortable that they're doing it for us. Okay, they believe in us. They're doing it for themselves, their families, and they want to do something that is worthwhile because they're public servants. So, hey.
Believe in the science, people. You know?
Yeah. And can I just add something to that? You guys need to hear this as well. There was an independent study done, and under this administration, I want you to hear what's at stake. And we're talking about increasing vaccines and increasing boosters, but you need to hear what's at stake. Under this administration and the independent study, it showed that we saved 2.3 million lives in the U.S. How many of those were us? Prevented 17 million hospitalizations and 66 million cases. How many of those were us? Avoided $900 billion in health care costs. Unfortunately, and this is what you need to hear, Republicans in Congress are holding up critical funding we need to make to ensure progress, to save even more lives, and to stay prepared against any potential surge or variants. Republicans in Congress are holding up critical funding. I'm only allowed to say that much. You know what to do with the rest. Inaction will leave our nation less prepared for future surges and variants. It will mean, fewer vaccines, fewer treatments, fewer tests for the American people. And this is dearly disappointing. And so, again, they are holding up crucial funding. I'm in there.
All right.
Did y'all acknowledge the first Supreme Court black woman?
Yes.
Did we acknowledge that?
Yes.
You all know what happens when you put the sister on the job. You know the job will get done. Amen? Amen.
There's a question, I think she said.
There's questions. At this time, what I would like to do is just give each of the panelists at least 1 minute, and then after that, I believe we'll go to questions. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Is that all right with you? And I'm going to check with my public.
Check him.
He said no, so you better ask
All right, tell me what we need to do then. Let them ask the questions. All right, no problem. Okay, at this time,
stand up.
At this time, if you have a question, you can ask.
You can't do questions.
No, he said you can.
Well, one is saying one thing. Maybe y'all need to talk to each other.
Ask him quick. Ask your question quickly.
Okay.
Yeah,
At this time, we're going to ask, as you indicated, the panelists to give their 1 minute remark so that we can wrap and continue on with the next plenary.
Okay, all right. Thank you. All right.
But I do want to, and I'm going to speak to Reverend Sharpton about this. We want to take this and maybe do it in the next month or so virtually, because the information is so vital, not just for those who are here, but certainly for our community. And so we had already started thinking, like, how do we take this and do this maybe a couple more times, definitely once within the next month or so, and have it be a virtual conversation for the community, because a lot of what you're saying, so many people need to hear. So we're going to ask everybody in the aisle take their seat, because the panelists will be wrapping with their 1 minute remarks at this time. Thank you.
So much for your grace. Okay, Mother, we're going to start here, and we're going to go all the way down the row, all right? You got your 1 minute.
Vote. That's the one thing I got left to say. Reverend English couldn't say it, but I'm going to tell you. If the Republicans is holding up their money, they've turned into absolute fools. I don't work for the government. Vote. Let's take these fools out of office. They're going to destroy our lives. We cannot allow it to continue. Vote. That's my 1 minute.
Thank you.
Okay, here's my 1 minute. Please email me partnerships@hhs.gov. If you can pull out your phone, partnerships, and say, I want to stay connected. Why? We don't have money directly, but we can point you to some grants that are existing. We have grants that have come out on improving substance use disorder treatment and recovery outcomes for adults in reentry. Just released a Building Communities of Recovery grant, expansion of comprehensive suicide prevention across the U.S. Yes, houses of worship and nonprofits can qualify for this. More than $60 million invested in public health, AmeriCorps programs, and we announced availability of new funding to support community-based doulas. And so this is just to bring this home on a very practical level. Think of yourself, those that are pastors, those that are faith leaders, those that are, in anything faith. Just think of this. What can I do to become a church without walls? What does that look like in my own respective wall? When you think of maternal health, who in my church can become a certified doula? Who can become a certified health worker? How can I now stop our black women from dying by having support groups in our houses of worship that meets once a week? So what I'm saying is there's some very, very practical things that you can do, and we want to stay connected in helping you reimagine church. Not next Mother's Day, not what color we're going to be wearing, but what does church without walls look like? I'm done.
All right.
Do the email.
Partnerships at hhs.gov. Partnerships@hhs.gov. You can just, if you email me right now, we are automatically connected. You'll get all the grant opportunities. Again, it's very competitive, but we also do technical. There's also capacity building, etc., to help you be in position, right? Because you got to think church is business, not just, we gave out a couple of, plates of food. Well, how does church's business look like? So we definitely want to continue that conversation with you and continue giving you information real time from federal. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Q. I don't have as much impassioned, it speaks for my last 60 seconds, but first of all, I want to say thank you to everybody showing up today. I want to say thank you for all of your questions. I want to say, please, true, we will try to get to some of these questions. I think everybody would be willing to answer some of them either after the panel or happy to share our email addresses for sure. Yes. We need your help to continue to go forward. And so I will tell you that you're going to hear some things from Tony and I in the very near future. So anything you can do to help educate us as to where the real problems lie, where we can help influence, we are listening, we are here to help, and we are hopeful that you'll support us as well. Thank you.
first, I thank Reverend, because when I asked Reverend to do this, he didn't hesitate. And I thank everybody on this panel, because when I reached out, everybody said, okay, Tony, I'll do it. I think for my last parting words, I think that we're injured physicians on the road to recovery. We can rescue and reconstruct ourselves and create the good world that we all want to live in. And I think we have to ask ourselves, if not this, then what? And if we don't, who will? That's it for me, y'all.
Right. Yeah, I want to, like Tony, thank everyone for coming and staying here in the session today. And the one thing I would like to leave folks with is get one person in your family trained as a health provider. I mean, because you need people in your family who can help translate information and who can help folks when they are in trouble. So or they need to understand healthcare. So I would just recommend everybody in here find some young person that you can get trained in healthcare for your family.
Lastly, I'll just say, kudos to the rest of my panel members. They've just been amazing and outstanding, and I learned a lot today. But just remember, please review. We got some wonderful COVID medications. I want you to review and learn about those medications. There's some monoclonal antibodies and some great drugs that if you're infected, may save your lives. Also, we can get rid of and eradicate HIV in this country. We have some wonderful injectable medications you can take once a month that can prevent you from contracting HIV. Lastly, boosters. If you're over the age of 50, are you immunocompromised, get that additional booster if you're eligible, because it prevents 90% of hospitalizations compared to less than 60% if you don't get that additional booster shot. So learn, and don't come back next year unless you've done one thing related to advocacy. You figure whatever that is, but don't show your face here.
I love it. Well, I'd like to thank each and every one of you once again. Let's give this panel a round of applause. And you haven't seen the last of us. How many of you know that? Amen. God bless you. Stay healthy and stay strong. Amen. Stay in the fight. Did you want to stay? Right here. Yeah. Who do you want to get the pictures for?
All right, we're going to